Hi, everybody, and welcome to tonight's episode of Lost Through the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Josh Miota. Tonight's special guest is Mike with Old Religion Dystopia. He has an awesome page on YouTube. It's actually Old Religion Dystopia 2. He has his first page was unfortunately erased. You get too close to disclosure that tends to happen. Mike has a variety of experiences, but one I'm really looking forward to tonight is one near and dear to my heart, Bigfoot and cryptozoology. With that being said, Mike, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and take it away?
Hey man. So yeah, I am someone who's had encounters. I've had several encounters. Two of them. Well, the first one was with a Crow Indian shaman in 2017 in the summer, the first week of August. It was during that solar eclipse during that period of time. There was a big solar eclipse that was going on, and yeah, I got 15 feet in front of my grill while I was standing next to this guy, and then I had another one in my backyard later on that year in December the 17th. So I imagine I've had things as recent as this weekend, as we talked about earlier. So I don't know how you want to go about this, but I'm here for you, man. Lead me, guide me, walk beside
Huh.
me
What was your first experience
with
which
Bigfoot.
made you with Bigfoot and which made you start researching and filming and
Well, I think I started out. We talked a little bit. I was a truther in the truther movement. The YouTube stuff and all that, and I became very disenchanted in that. So I took on the most faux pas, most forbidden topic in the truther community at the time, and that was Bigfoot, because everybody knows that Bigfoot's a joke, right? It's just a government psyop, right? So, and I was going to go out and prove that picture that you have there of Patty from the Patterson film, and Patterson is the one who actually filmed it. Gimlin was there, but Patterson's the one who filmed it. Uh, I was going to go find out if that, I was going to prove it was just another government psyop, and that's a mixed bag. That's a double-edged sword there. So in the process, I also started interviewing people who had their own encounters. And I was talking to people from different channels, and I was spending. I did like a 2 dozen part series with MK Davis, and this would have been on TalkShoe.com at the time when we did those. And as time went on, and I started interacting with, like one lady was a Choctaw medicine woman, and I just, after about 6 months, I realized I'm hearing all these stories, I've watched all these videos, read all these articles, and talked to some of the biggest names at the time in the Bigfoot community as far as in the internet world, and I realized I was going to have to go out and find out for myself. So I was having a little bit of interaction with Mark, and that's MARC, Mark from Colorado Bigfoot, and he was demonstrating massive, very complex tree structures that he was finding in the hills and in the mountains of Colorado. And I was just finding out other people were doing the same thing. So I figured, maybe I can find the same things in my town. So, can't be, I wasn't expecting to find anything. I had limited mobility. I wasn't going to be able to go miles into the mountains and all that because of my multiple sclerosis, which wasn't as bad 5 years ago as it is now. So I used a cane back then. Now I have to use a wheelchair. So what I decided, well, maybe I can find stuff that's close to or in parks or close to the road and highways and go from there. And in the beginning of July of 2017, I went to a place called Old Oak Openings Park, Metro Park, and it was with me and my son, and I pulled over the shoulder of the road, and the left side there's the sand dunes of the Oak Openings, which is known for. We have our own native prickly pear and all this where we're from, and there's woods on the right. And I said, well, why don't I just go walk in those woods and see what happens? So, and I swear to God, it's the very first time I ever did it. The very first time. I and my son, we walked 10 feet into the woods, get past the brush line and the leaves and all that. They're blocking what's actually in the woods. And on there and behold, there's this giant teepee structure. And right in front of our faces. It was big enough for me to walk under and my son and all that. Those who go to my YouTube page, please subscribe if you want. And I'll try to encourage my followers to subscribe to your channel because we're both trying to build our following again.
Absolutely.
You know, I used to have thousands.
Be sure to give them a sub.
Yeah, so. And, yeah, there it was, man. And I got a picture of it in my closing images when I do a video and all that. And after that, something happened. After that, like, things just kicked into gear. And next thing you know, I'm finding stuff in the middle of my town. And I'm not kidding. You know, the city that I live in, I'm going to tell people, I don't care. You can come. You could all come here if you want and do Bigfoot research. But I'm going to tell you, you're wasting your time because you'll be able to do this in your own home. Or your own neighborhood, I should say. Or your own town or somewhere close to you. You don't need to go thousands of miles away or even go a mile into the woods to start seeing signs of quote-unquote Bigfoot. And, you know, I found a teepee structure in the middle of my town. Literally. It was like 25, 30 feet downhill from where there's like an L shopping plaza of restaurants like Little Caesars and Johnny Papa's, and I can't remember all the names of them now because I don't eat there anymore. But at the time, I actually went there. It was in August, and I'm going to skip because I actually had a counter before that. That's a really bizarre one too. I think I'll just focus on the Crow Indian one right now, okay? Because we have limited time. But if you want to talk again, I got multiple encounters and multiple images. And maybe I'll share this encounter. Maybe we'll share some images. How's that? You know what I mean?
That sounds great.
You know what I mean? So what was going on was in the middle of my town, down the hill, there was a grove of trees. And down that hill, something or someone decided to build a pyramid structure. Do you know what I'm talking about when I say that? Or a teepee structure? Bigfoot teepee?
Yes.
You do? Okay.
So it's like the branches leaning into...
Right.
Yes.
And I tell you what, when I'm done with this story, I'll share the one that I found in the middle of my town and the image that looks very similar that I think I caught a dog.
When you talk, how big are they? Because
they go in different sizes. The ones that
I have a lot of friends that hunt too. Are you sure they're not ground blind?
Yeah, except for one thing. It's in the middle of town.
That will tell you no.
So, and yeah, I don't. It would take a lot of effort too for a guy to use that as a ground blind, like some of the ones that I'll share with you. I mean, we're talking like the main trunk of trees, the smaller trees, right, where all the branches are stripped off and lean against a larger tree, making this structure. I don't know why they do it. They haven't told me about it. They're not talking to me, and there's no mind speak with me or something like that. So, and so yeah, there's the middle of my town, man, and like, what the hell is teepee structure in the middle of time. If people playing games, or if it's like I started thinking stuff like, well, maybe if people are practicing witchcraft or something like that. You know, maybe this because this is part of some kind of witchcraft rituals and all that. But I started taking pictures as well. I learned from my own experience and also interacting with a guy named Scott Carpenter, who's well known in the Bigfoot community. And what he was doing, just like I was doing, I discovered he was filming stuff from behind him and to the side, not that he was looking directly at him. So I was doing the same thing, and I was finding entities in this grove. I have some images of that too. Where right next to where the teepee structure is. That's 25 feet on the bottom of the hill, and it's running up this hill, and there's just the side, just to the west of it is an office building, a 2-story office building, and there's like this path. This has been worn, going to the dumpster where all the food and all the waste goes, right, and back. And at first I thought it was just maybe people using it as a shortcut. But then as time went on, I realized that was pretty illogical. I could see how some people would do that, but how worn down it was, there was major traffic going on here. So a couple weeks later, after I found that teepee structure, I was talking to my big brother, who himself has had a encounter in Northern California with a Sasquatch, like the one that's behind you, right? And I was talking to my brother and said, Eric, man, I don't think that this thing is adding up. It's not what the official narrative is. It's not what everybody's trying to tell us, because they're not adding up. I mean, there's just. And, I come from a scientific background. My education is in environmental science and management. I'm a guy that has had a history of my past designing nature trails and wildflower, gardens and meadows and bogs and boardwalks, and planting tons of trees, and involved in greenscaping, which is, helping developers.
So cool.
Yeah, it was, and I was proving that it was actually working, and then 9/11 happened, so that's another story. So, anyways, and I'm talking to my brother.
So that being said, too, when something doesn't look normal when you're out in the woods. And
yeah,
you're saying, them teepee structures definitely sound off, especially if they're made out of full trunks of trees.
In the middle of your town, right? Yeah, or even in the woods, it would be, especially the complicated or complex, excuse me, that's what I'm trying to say. Sorry, it's the MS getting in the way. The complex structures that are being formed, the giant X structures. You just, for a moment there, for a while, I was playing with the idea that maybe the government was doing this, and they had maybe some young bucks and helicopters and all that, and they're doing it, you know what I mean? And the night and all that. But the more I thought about that, is how irrational that even thought is, considering the fact that you can find this throughout all of North America and every state in North America, as long as you got trees, right? From California to New York, from Canada to Texas and Florida. So, no, there's something else bigger going on here. So, I'm talking to my big brother, and I said, man, I think there's something spiritual going on here. And I'm not one of these, I didn't even believe in that stuff in 2017. And he goes, Mike, do not be surprised now that you're having a greater understanding of what's going on, that you will start interacting or coming across Native Americans. And I go, what do you mean by that? And he says, well, because you understand a deeper understanding and meaning of this thing called Bigfoot, Sasquatch, you're going to be more in line with what they're saying. You're going to be more receptive, and you're going to be able to have conversations with these people. And I'm like, Eric, I live in Northwest Ohio. There's no Native Americans. The closest Native American that I know of might be me, because I'm part Ojibwe and Cherokee from my grandma's side. But there's no I don't know any Native Americans. I wouldn't even call myself a Native American. I just have part of it in me. And the closest Native Americans that we have is in northern Michigan, the Ojibways up there. How am I ever going to run across a Native American in my town or in my area? Well, lo and behold, I'm not making this up, and I'm sure people think I am. It's hard to believe. It's even hard for me to believe this time, but it's after all these years. But within 24 hours, I go and decide to go to Little Caesars and get a cheap $5 pizza because I didn't feel like eating and I didn't have my son. I didn't feel like cooking, excuse me, and I didn't have my son, and just get a cheap $5 crappy pizza to get me through the night. You know what I mean? And I get one.
Oh, I've had them days.
They're awful, man. I can't even stand them now. But I can't even eat processed food at this point because of my MS. So I'm pretty much living on these super smoothies, organic fruit and vegetables and nuts. And that's, anyways. Yeah, 24 hours, I go get a pizza. I come out and I get to my car and there's a dude walking up the street from where that teepee structure was, or is, or as the time was. And he looks just like a Native American. He's got this long black hair. It's salt and pepper, he's got some gray in it. It's a little rough looking. But, being, a forest fighter and spending time out west, I can tell an indigenous dude from one that's not, and I want to go talk to this guy. This cannot be happening. So I go, I get in my car, I drive over there, I roll down my window, go, hey man, and probably the craziest thing to ask is a complete stranger, but after what I've been experiencing the past month, and after what my brother just said, I go, man, are you a Native American? And he looks at me, he goes, yeah. And I go, I got some pizza here, man. Would you be interested if I pull over here in the parking lot? I'll give you some pizza and let's talk. Believe it or not, that's what I said. And he goes, yeah. And because, I had nothing to lose. I mean, here we go. What are the odds, right? We start talking. I ask him, do you know about that teepee structure down the road? He goes, oh, yeah. Do you know about Bigfoot and all that? And he goes, oh, yeah. He says, I've seen him in Montana and Northern California. And we get talking, and one of the things because we're kind of compressing this story for the short amount of time we're doing it, I had discovered in a cemetery up the hill, maybe less than a quarter of a mile from where we're talking. It's a Roman Catholic cemetery. There's a ravine in the middle of it. And what had happened a few weeks earlier, this giant, a mature oak tree, or was it a walnut? It was either walnut or oak tree. But it had a huge round trunk. I couldn't put my arms around it, let's put it that way. That's how big it was. And about to my height, I'm 5'9", it's where this break was. And it broke there and fell over into the ravine, but it wasn't disease. It wasn't from the emerald ash, the beetles or the boars. It wasn't some freak storm. It wasn't hit by lightning. It literally was broke there and was in this ravine. It still had the lease on it. And I noticed when I was driving around in my town looking for signs, that when I got out of my car and I was taking pictures and all that, that there was even in the daytime, I was seeing these black shadowy entities, creatures, whatever you want to call it, behind the tree, in the ravine. And I was capturing it on my film, but it was they were translucent, they're transparent, so when I was talking to this Native American, I go, I think I found what I thought at the time was a nest, right? Because you hear about this thing called Bigfoot or Sasquatch nests. Well, it turns out that I was wrong about that. Nests are a little different than that, but They were hanging out there, right? So I said, I think I found a Sasquatch nest. And now this is getting towards dark. By the time we actually get to the cemetery, it's now dark. But I said, hey, man, let's go over to that cemetery. Because, we were talking. I said, I'm sorry for this bouncing around, but I said, you know what? Let's go to... I gave him some pizza. We're talking. I asked him where you're heading. He says, home. I said, would you like a ride back to your place? You know what I mean? It seems like, things were gelling and things were cool. And I said, well, on the way, we'll stop at this place where I think it's in a cemetery that I think is a Bigfoot nest. And he says, cool. So we get there, and the ravines like this, the roads within 4 feet from the ravines starts dropping off and dropping down, right? Where we're at. We park right there. We're directly west from where this tree has fallen in that ravine. In the middle of the ravine, there's like a 2-foot wide stream that runs through it that eventually goes into the main creek that runs through town. And so we go there, and I go, let's go check it out, man. We open up the doors. We go. He's got pizza in his hand. I'm pointing and saying, man, you see that? That tree, something's going on in around that damn tree that's in that ravine. He does that Bigfoot howl, you know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
I can't do it because of my MS. I can barely talk at this point, but he does that, woo, real loud. And we see these two very dark heads, rather pointed heads, pop up from behind the tree. And, we both look at each other and goes, did you see the one I'm seeing? He goes, oh, yeah. And he goes, do you see the one? It's got eye shine. I couldn't see the eye shine, but he said he could see the eye shine. He proceeds to throw a piece of pizza over there. Right? And he doesn't know how and all that. And one of them stands up behind the tree. And it's towering over this tree. And this tree, it's, the branches and all that, easily 15 feet. Of course, it's in a ravine, so it could be higher on the ravine, whatever. This thing stands up, and I go, whoa. And he throws another pizza. And I turn to him and I go, what the hell are you doing, man? He goes, what's wrong? You know what's wrong. What? Those damn things are going to follow me home. I live in this town, and you're throwing frickin' pizza at them. You know what I mean? I mean, what the hell do you think you're doing? And he didn't say anything. And at that same moment, somehow, that thing got from the other side of the ravine to our side of the ravine, and like that. If it went through, okay, so here's the thing. If it jumped over the tree, based on the size in which I will describe in a little bit, the earth should have shook. If it was my son, if he would have jumped just a few feet, you would have felt at least that, right? A grown man at 200 pounds, you definitely would have felt somebody just jumping a few feet from that distance. This thing was massive. This thing, from what I could tell, was easily 9 feet. Huge. And he's crawling up this ravine slowly, like a frog that's about ready to, catch a dragonfly or something, right? A bug. And I'm looking at this, and he's looking at it, and this thing's got 15 feet in front of us. And it was the most bizarre thing. These things are so black. They're blacker than the sky itself in the darkness of night, right? Like, how black it is in your background? Imagine something even blacker than that. It would stand out, right? So black. And it shimmered. It was like every single hair on its body was up and was shimmering, right? Or like there was electricity running through it. Let's go back to this whole thing about if he jumped over the tree, we should have felt that. We didn't. If it would have walked around the tree, we would have heard it. If it would have went through the tree and it was a physical entity, right? Strictly flesh and blood, we would have heard branches breaking, right? None of that happened. We didn't hear it. All we did is we saw it go from one side of the ravine and the other side of that tree, and now it's on our side of the ravine and it's climbing up the ravine. And it gets in 15 feet in front of us. And the good thing, I guess, is, and it was definitely good, is that we were just a couple feet away from my car, right? So it wasn't that big of a deal to get into our car and take off, right? And I look at him and I said, you know, and this has all happened so fast, and I'm in kind of shock. I don't know if you've had one of those experiences where you have something that's super intense and it happens so suddenly that you're not really prepared for it. So your mind's not registering clearly yet what's going on. And so there's, you know, people talk about when you have these interactions with these things, you could feel dread, fear. It just comes over you, right? And it's none of that was happening for me. What I was thinking about, I was pissed off at him because he threw that pizza at that thing and the thing popped out. And two, I'm standing next to a dude that I just met who I just I mean, within less than half an hour, who says, yes, he's a Native American. He goes by the name of Crow. I asked him when I was at the parking lot, you know, give him some pizza. Why do you go by the name Crow? He says, because I'm a Crow Indian. And I'm thinking to myself, well, and he says his friends call him Crow. And I'm like, that's not very original, but oh well, you know, whatever, you know, whatever works, man. And I find out later on the drive back to his place that he's not only a Crow Indian, he claims to be a Crow Indian medicine man that practices the art of was it death and was it darkness? Is that what it is? So he's the dark death. He's in that side of medicine, the medicine man. So so I'm standing here. There's a Bigfoot. He's 15 feet in front of me. I couldn't see the face and the details of the face, but I could see the shape of the head. I could see the arms like this, and his, you know, so you could, you know, obviously walking with his fingers, but I couldn't see in detail anything like his fingernails and all that kind of stuff. Picture a frog crawling like this, that kind of shape, crawling up the ravine. And I'm standing next to this dude, and I'm more worried about the dude next to me because I don't know this guy from Adam. And my brother just 24 hours earlier was telling me that don't be surprised, basically prophesying that I'm going to be running across some Native Americans, right? And it's not supposed to be happening in the middle of my town, just down the road for where this teepee structure is, and a quarter mile away up the hill where there's in this Roman Catholic cemetery in this ravine, right? This is freaking me out. This is bizarre. This is like made for TV, you know, story here. You know what I mean? This is straight out of Twilight Zone. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go. And I get in the car and said, if you want to go, you better get in the car because I'm taking off now. So he got in the car. And we never got to see him, the Bigfoot, in quotes, like stand up or anything like that. It was still always below that ravine. And when I was taking off, I wasn't looking for him. You know, it was dark and we're in a cemetery of no lights. And I'm more concerned about to get the hell out of the cemetery and not, you know, trash my car running over tombstones. You know what I mean? And
that would have been bad.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And so by the time...
What were you told the police too? We were Bigfoot hunting and I drove over a tombstone, you know?
No kidding. But on the way back to his place, we started talking. Oh, yeah, one of the things, when he's crawling up the ravine, the Bigfoot thing, and I'm standing next to him, this is one of the things I also said to him. And I was, you know, in that stage of my life just discovering, or not necessarily discovering the Bible, but kind of into it, you know what I mean? And definitely into like the evangelical side of Christianity at the time, and demons and Bigfoot and all. You know, I was at the time thinking that Bigfoot and all this stuff was just demonic entities. So, you know, not just call them all demons because of my own ignorance. Today I have a little different perspective on things, but at the time that's how I saw it. And I was like, "Do you think we should pray to Jesus?" And he's like, "No." And I'm like, "Okay," which is, you know, I'm a grown man. I'm 49 years old when this happens, right? I'm 54 now. I know I seem a little, you know, my attitude and everything, I'm maybe a little immature for my age. But, you know, the fact of the matter is, that's what I said. He's saying, no, no, no. And I'm just like, that was another reason why I wanted to leave, because I don't know what the hell is going on. It isn't after spending time with some of the big names in the Bigfoot community, supposed experts in all this, and I'm having this experience, and I have no idea how to handle this. So I'm taking off. On the way home, or to his place, allegedly his place, he starts talking to me. He explains to me that he's a Crow medicine man that practices death and the black arts of his traditions or whatever. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? I don't know if quite. And he gets in the process of explaining, he tells me about this story. How he went down to Mansfield, Ohio with a group of guys and people and sacrificed a 15-year-old girl, literally. And he says that, quote unquote, Lucifer manifested, right? And he said it was the most beautiful thing in the world. And I'm like, say what? Oh yeah, he was the most beautiful thing in the world. No. Before that, you said what? What did you do to a 15-year-old girl? And he kind of looks at me and goes, dude, and you don't feel bad about that? Oh no. Dude, if that was me, I would feel like the biggest pile of shit that there ever was. Sorry for my language, but I would if I knew I was involved in such an act. And things got darker in that car, right? And he even more wanted to get away from me, right? I think once you realized I was a Christian, and then, and I was thinking at first, you know, is this guy just doing this just to kind of pull my leg, which is kind of weird to be doing that after just having the experience we just had, regardless, you know what I mean? It was a really intense experience, right? Mm-hmm. And, you know, and prior to that, I was like, man, that was amazing. Wasn't, you know, we should get each other's numbers and talk. And he's like, oh, I don't want to do that. And I see why now he didn't want to do that, because he starts explaining this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, obviously in his mind, he wasn't going to be able to trust me. And after what I discovered about him, I didn't want to spend any time with him either. So as we're driving, it's about four miles away where he allegedly lived. Instead of dropping him off in the neighborhood they said he lived in, he asked me to pull over at this Italian restaurant's parking lot. So I do that. He takes off. He starts walking down that towards that neighborhood, and as he's walking away, he just kind of just disappears. Just kind of just fades away. I never see him actually go into the neighborhood, is what I'm trying to say. Okay? I watch him going down the street, and he
Have you ever seen him again after that?
No.
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 Wow. I mean, what are the chances, especially within 24 hours of your brother saying that? That's amazing.
It is, and it revealed a lot to me, and more and more things happen. Supernatural things, and I'll probably save the other stories for another time. We'll get together. Hopefully, we'll get together a couple more times, and I'll share some more of these stories.
But, absolutely.
But it revealed to me as later on, when everything registered, I started putting the pieces together. That was this. Who was this person? Was this even a person I was with? And then that started. It really affirmed to me that, or reaffirmed, what is the word? Reaffirmed to me that there's something supernatural that's associated with quote unquote Bigfoot, Sebe, Sasquatch, Grassman. There's something deeper going on here than just some flesh and blood thing. I described a few examples of characteristics and things that happened that proved to me, or proved with my own eyes and my own experience, that there's something bigger going on than a primate or some Neanderthal or whatever. There's something that's even beyond our understanding. I don't even know if we even have the words to describe it. You know, we say things like demons and angels and ghosts and spirits, but do we even have the vocabulary really for what I experienced and what tens of thousands of others experienced? If not hundreds of thousands. It's only now that people are becoming more open and honest with their experiences. And, you know, there's a few channels out there on YouTube that that allow people to share their experiences, where they're open about exactly what they experience. You know what I mean? Not just,
yes, this is what we're trying to do.
Right. You know, and so, and it's because, you know, they wanted it in this Hegelian dialectic that they created of this whole thing. It's either the woo camp or it's the flesh and blood camp, which is another Hegelian dialectic. It's the whole principle going, you know, you take two sides and it comes something in the middle. But the more and more I study this, and the more and more I start to meet people who have been doing this for a long time, researching Bigfoot, serious researchers who have spent decades doing this. They're all, at least, if not in public, at least, you know, on conversations on the internet and on the phone, are saying that, you know, Mike, this is a lot bigger than you think. And it's a lot bigger than what they're saying. And all these YouTube channels and all these books that are on the bookshelves. It's a lot bigger. There's a connection with the stars, with these things called UFOs. And I know, like, you got your little thing going on with the shrooms. You don't even need the shrooms to have this stuff happen, folks, because I wasn't on any drugs. So, although, you know, when I was younger and I was a musician, when I was a punker, I enjoyed the shrooms. But I'm 54, and it's been decades since I had that. And, you know, there's it's not just psychedelic. There's something real going on here. This interdimensional, spiritual. So, you know, if we look at the creation that we live in, it's a very dualistic creation. There's night and there's day. There's darkness and there's light. There's evil and there's good. And I honestly think that these entities that we call Bigfoot, dogmen, cryptids, a lot of these spirits, we call spirits in quotes, forest spirits, are creatures of the night. We never see them actually building these structures. We always see after they're built, right? And no one's ever seen them during the day build them. Here's another little fact that people don't realize. You know, when it comes to tree knocking, you know, there's not a single person who's ever come up and said, I saw them whacking that tree with a club. I don't know a single person. There might be someone out there, but I personally don't know a single person who said, I saw Bigfoot knocking on that tree. Yet people here
that is true. I've never heard of occurrence of them. I mean, I've heard of people finding busted trees, you know, busted. It looks like somebody snapped it and it's way too high up for
the tree breaks.
Man
I mean, I found a bunch of them today and yesterday in the locations that I went to in my town, and I'm more than happy to share you some images. But no one's ever seen it happen. The video that I did Sunday, well, actually Saturday, the video that I have where I found the teepee structure in the ravine where I have where I've believe I captured a dogman hiding behind a tree close to the teepee structure. There's like a tree break. Something happened. And, it was windy on Saturday, but the wind wasn't that bad. The next day, I find in a different location, but in the same general area, within several hundred yards away from where I found the teepee structure, a fresh tree break in which there's leaves are still on this tree. It's not as big as the one that I found in that ravine in the cemetery, but still the trunk was a good decent size, of maybe 8-10 inches in diameter, maybe that. And the wind wouldn't have done that. The wind wasn't strong enough. We are in the middle of a drought in the east. So could it be the drought? No, there were still leaves on it. So the tree was strong enough that the root system was strong enough that the drought wasn't doing it. Something broke that tree. Was that the same thing that I recorded in that video I made Saturday? This was posted on my YouTube channel, where you'll hear, I don't know, about 10 minutes into somewhere around there, I don't know, at least halfway into the video, you'll hear me go, "What the hell is that?" And I play it over 3 times, and you can hear it. This sounds like a tree break or a tree knock or something like that, right? And so my point is, there's something going on at night. We're not out in those woods. We're busy right now, right? It's night. You and I are staring at the scrying mirror called the computer monitor. Or people are staring at the television screen. Or you're boxed in your little box in your safe shelter with your electric light bulbs or fluorescent light bulbs or whatever to keep you, to give you light. We are not creatures of darkness. In fact, if we hear about this, the children of the light, right? Well, I think we all are. We can't function in the darkness. Period. You try to function in the middle of the woods without a flashlight, without fire, without some kind of artificial light source, and you won't be able to do it. You'll be tripping over logs and sticks and whatever, you know what I mean? And we are, but they can function in the night. But we hardly ever see them in the daytime. We do have videos and images, but we hardly ever see them. And most of the images, they're like what I call they're tree peeping. They're popping up behind a tree or out of a tree. This story is so much more complicated than they've been willing to talk about in all these Bigfoot channels and Dogman channels. They will not go deep. I mean, listen, it was Native American history as part of their culture for hundreds, if not thousands of years, that these things came in and out of the trees, not came around the trees, not just hid behind the trees. They came in and out of the trees. That's what they called them, tree boogers and tree apes, tree peepers, and all this other stuff. And so I just would ask your audience to broaden your horizons if you haven't yet. As difficult as it will be, and it definitely was for me, for someone who has a scientific background, to say, okay, let's step back and let's look at this in a different light. Let's start listening to other voices. And yeah, we're going to get a lot of different opinions, and some of it is not going to make any sense. And when you start going out in the field for yourself, and I've proved to people, what I'm trying to do is prove to people, you don't have to go miles in the woods to start seeing this stuff and witness this stuff and filming this stuff. You can do it in your very close, as long as there's some, hey, you got a grove of trees. I filmed stuff in the middle of the day in a grove of trees. I filmed stuff in my neighbor's trees. I got amazing images. Things that look just like aliens and Bigfoot and all sorts of stuff. And you'll be able to do that too. The thing is too, is we have different cameras even in 2022, in the past 5 years with the P900, P1000, all these other really good cameras that are coming out, that were never affordable or accessible to the average person now. You can get a used P900 for probably $200 now, which just a couple years ago was $1,000. I mean, the P1000 was $1,000. What, last year, 2 years ago? And so you can, and that's what I use the P900, and the sharpness and the crispness of these images that you can take with these better cameras is shocking. It's the type of spirits that you can film, the type of entities that you can film, and you'll discover and you'll be able to distinguish between pareidolia, which is another one of those things like conspiracy theorists that was foisted on us. I mean, they were brutal about this pareidolia and the Bigfoot community 5 years ago. Everything's pareidolia. Everything's pareidolia. Everything, to the point that people just, if it looked a little fuzzy and it was a little blurry, had to be pareidolia. But people like myself, Scott Carpenter, and others, we've been like saying, hey, listen, if these things are more on the supernatural side and these are more spiritual or ethereal, it would make sense that they would be a little blurry. And with the new cameras, we can even distinguish at times the faces, the mouth, the nose, the eyes. It's not just, a couple knots on a tree, right? And it's,
Right.
oh, look, or, the kitchen sink, it kind of looks like a face, kind of that garbage, right? You will just be able to develop, have any artistic eye at all. You'll be able to see, oh, that stands out like a sore thumb. That ain't pareidolia. That definitely is. You'll be able to figure it out. But man, did they push hard on us, this whole thing about pareidolia. And I think that one of the things that happened is because my instincts, and from a little research that I've done, the camera was originally designed not for you and I to take family portraits, but is to figure out how to film these spirits that these elites and the oligarchs, and those are heavy into like spiritualism. And I'm not knocking anybody's in spiritualism. I'm just saying this is, they've been looking for hundreds of years of figuring out a way to capture the images of these things that people interact with, that you smoked in the past and you still can. But now with cameras, and I'm not talking about cameras, I'm talking about stills. Stills will allow you to have more incredible detail of what's going on and capture those things that happen in that second and within that second, right, in that moment. Whereas you take a camera, a video camera or whatever, you're doing videos, then you have to break down every little moment, and then now you're dealing more and more with the potential for pareidolia in that. And it's just so much harder for some reason to capture these images where you take that one shot. That's what I've discovered. I think that's what they originally, even when the original intent of why they pushed the camera was to film these spirits, these entities. Now, eventually it would trickle down to us, as the public, hey, we can do family portraits and take pictures of war scenes and memorials and buildings, you know what I mean? But at the time, the motives for a lot of these people were in the occult and in alchemy and the mystery schools, is figure out a way how we could film these things that are interacting with people, because this stuff has been going on forever and a day, right? People, saying they're having experience with ghosts and with spirits and Bigfoot and dogmen and all that, and things in the woods. Yeah, and you'll be shocked how easy it actually is to start filming these things once you know where to go, what locations to go, and you'll realize it doesn't take anybody. There's nothing exceptional about Michael Adams, and if you've been listening to me for the past hour, you should have realized that, right? If anything, I might be just a 54-year-old dying, prick, but that's
Mike,
about it.
are you familiar with sea flying? through a lot of the extraterrestrial community. I'm sure you heard that term before. Would you say looking for Bigfoot's a lot like that? It all depends on your content. You know what I mean? What you're putting out there. If you're positive, most likely they can probably sense that, and they're probably more willing to show themselves. Would you say there's a lot that's going on with the Bigfoot's kind of like what is going on with the ships in the sky? You have to put out good intent.
I don't know. I'm going to tell you why. Because, when I go out, I'm not, I'm going to find these things and I'm going to bring one in dead or alive or that kind of stuff, right? I'm just going out to find out the truth. Maybe that's it. I can't tell you, because you're going to have to ask, you're going to have to do, apply the scientific method in this and compare different people with different motives and different personalities and see, is there a difference with, say, someone who is, because listen, I've been extremely pissed off at these things too, and I still filmed them. Pissed off to the point, especially if you ever find out, if you had a chance to talk of what happened in the December of that year, which would take some time to explain. So I don't really want to talk too much about it today, but after what I went through December, I was so pissed off. I went back. I broke that damn teepee structure in that middle of that town, behind that. I went around and broke a bunch of those structures. I was pissed off of what they did to me and my son for 3 days. And I'm still... Was I having... was it a bad intent? Was I in the wrong state of mind? Who I am today, who I was 5 years ago, I'm much different, like what I know about, I'm not touching anything that's theirs. In fact, of course, my health issues, but even if it wasn't for my health issues, I'd be very hesitant at this point hesitant to even touch any of their structures or even get too close to any of it. You know what I mean? I treat it now like you're like in a museum and there's a piece of art, right? And you know how you're not supposed to touch that art with your fingers, right?
Mm-hmm.
You stand for distance and look at it. That's how I see it as now. Does that show any kind of respect to them? Does that I think it's a lot more complicated than the question you're asking, I think, requires more than just our intuition or our feelings, right? Because our feelings can fool us. I'm not saying you're wrong, by the way. I'm just saying, I'm giving I'm trying to be honest about answering it, right? First of all, I don't know, and B, to know, someone has to do some serious research on the matter. If not, we're just shooting at the hip once again, and just, this is how I feel. I mean, if that's all we have to go by, then that's all we have to go by, right? But that doesn't mean that we're correct, right? I mean, I just, others have asked me this before, because they'll say, it seems like, Mike, you're not really, because we talked about this, I'm not going to, well, we maybe haven't talked about this, but like, if someone would ever ask me, because I know they won't, but if they did ask me to be in their convention, I would have to say, no, I don't want to be part of any of this. I don't want to profiteer from this. I don't want to exploit this situation. I just want to share the truth with people. And hopefully other people join me and that we work together to have a broader understanding of what's going on. I'm not here to exploit the situation. I'm not here to, I'm not going to be writing any books about this, right? I share my investigations with you and my pictures and all that to demonstrate to you that it's real and that it's out there. But and by the way, people have great experiences with these things and bad. And I've had a lot of bad experiences with it. Not all good, you know what I mean? Maybe I needed to go through that too to develop some respect of it. But yeah, it's you can't just fit it in one nice easy bag, comfortable. Here's a few bullet list of 12 things, and if you do these things right and you do that, all these magical things are going to happen. It's much more complicated than that. And our ability to manipulate circumstances and situations are very limited. You know what I mean? Like I said, these are the creatures of the night. They are part of that other half of this creation of darkness. And you can assume it's all, when I'm saying that, it's all evil. Or is it all evil? This place was created to be half dark and half light, 24/7 for since this creation, right? That, as far as we know. And so, to my opinion, how I feel today, they have a right to be there, even though that TP structure is 350 yards away from me, due east. And I know there's things there, and I've seen things in my backyard, and I've filmed things. And there's times when I'm freaked out, even being on my porch, right? Especially at night. Because I know they've been watching. I think people talk about familiar spirits, right? And I think that's a big part of this. I think that, you'll see people, they say that they're marked. And it's like a generation thing, right? And people see things, and how much of that is just what we call familiar spirits or regional spirits. In other words, there's certain things that are in my town that are not going to be in your town, right? They're going to be similar, but they're not going to be the same. And but still, that doesn't change the fact that it's becoming evident to me, very clear, that the ethereal realm, electricity. When somebody can explain to me and everyone else what electricity really is, you know what I'm saying? And where does that come from? And this is just, you could say it's burning coal and all this kind of stuff. And we can explain how we generate electricity and create electricity, but we still are working on our understanding of what electricity is. And we start thinking about Tesla, right? And we start thinking about the ether and what might be actually in the air all around us, and what possible parallel, we call them parallel universes, right? Or things that are...
I'm an absolute believer in parallel universes and parallel dimensions. I mean, the FBI and CIA are admitting to it in our time now. They have these classified files, if you're following them, that there is parallel dimensions running. Apparently, too, I heard recently they found one where time runs backwards. A timeline of ours that where all time just runs backwards, which is interesting to think about in its own.
Sure, why not? And you see the things that I film. How come I can film them, but I don't see them with my naked eye? At other times, I see them with my naked eye, but I can't film them. You hear me? What is right outside the wall here? In the darkness right now, right? What is in the trees? What is in the ground? Really? I think you have to take this as a holistic approach to this whole thing. You got to take a little bit maybe from the Christians and from the Muslims and from those who practice witchcraft, and those are shamans and people who are scientists and people understand, maybe it's some electrical engineers and physical engineers, and those who understand, you can't just say, we always want that sound bite, right? A line, and that's going to explain it all. And maybe we get this from newspapers, the headlines in the internet, say about the Bible. You see it all the time. People take a verse and build a whole theology, right? Or a dogma, a doctrine over a verse in the Bible instead of reading it in its context. When you read it in its context, it has a different story, right? The more true story. And that's what we have a tendency to do when we look at these things like Bigfoot and UFOs and angels, and we just take our own perspective, and that's it. It's human nature, and that's it. And instead of bringing it all together and try to see the bigger picture, and it takes a lot of work, and it's going to take generations to figure this out, right? You and I, I'm older than you. I guess technically I'm a older generation. I impart some wisdom, then you impart some wisdom to someone who's younger than
Right,
you,
absolutely.
and build upon
I
it.
don't see a Bigfoot coming in, an ambassador, and being like, "Yep, we're real. Come check us out. Don't touch our
Some
trees
guy
anymore."
once interviewed
I mean,
me.
it'd be amazing, but I don't see it happening.
It's funny that you said Bigfoot ambassador. Somebody actually accused me, or called me, I should say, a Bigfoot ambassador. He did an interview with me. And I'm like, no, I'm not. No, I'm sorry. I'm not anybody's ambassador. No one's mind spoke to me and said, Mike, this is what we need you to do. No, no, I'm no Bigfoot ambassador. Yeah, I mean, and vice versa, right? So, and by the way, there possibly could be just what you said, right? In certain quarters, right? In certain circles, and the more inner circles of knowledge and understanding, they might actually be interacting with these things because if you see the connection with the UFO and the Bigfoot and the stars and the sun and the moon and the seasons and the elements, it's
Absolutely, too. And there's so many
it's much bigger than what we're
seeded and dark government projects. I mean, if our government is, for example, working with extraterrestrials, what's to stop somebody that's working with them and be like, "Hey, you ever heard of Bigfoot?" And them being intrigued and be like, "Well, we're gonna go get one of those. We're gonna go research."
who knows.
That's the other thing too. I've noted with a lot with cryptozoology is a lot of times there is a whole extraterrestrial aspect that happens too. If you follow Mothman at all, there's a lot of activity around when he's seen. And part of me always believed maybe they're just as curious as us. Maybe they've seen what that was and they're like, "Hey, we need to investigate that." Or maybe they're in contact with it already.
I know of guys just swear that they've seen these things that look like Bigfoot and Dogman and other coming out of these quote unquote UFOs. And then orbs is always, it seems to be orbs sightings in the time when there's Bigfoot sightings. I know when I had, the one encounter with the that crow medicine man, I saw most bizarre UFO. And it was a lengthy. They seem to last a lot longer than the encounters that you have, like with Bigfoot and Dogman and all that kind of stuff. It's like, wasn't an angel? What was it? What was that thing that was black and white? That was several hundred yards up in the sky, right? Above the trees. Or at least several hundred feet above the trees. And just going from east to west in a very slow, steady direction. And I know it wasn't a plane, and I know it wasn't a satellite, and I know it wasn't a balloon, and it maintained that position, that it wasn't going up and down and blowing all over the place like a balloon, right? And it wasn't, a sataloon or a weather balloon or anything like that. Because I seen what they do, and it just drifted, and I just watched that thing, and I tried to film it with a camera, but I didn't have a powerful enough camera at the time to. It's kind of like the moon. Have you ever tried to film the moon with your cell phone?
Yes.
And it's like a little dot. It's just a little dot.
Doesn't. Yeah.
So you need a decent camera.
There's phones out there now that are getting incredible footage. I don't quite understand it.
Right, but you know what I'm saying. That's what was my problem when I was trying to take the picture of that back in 2017. Of this, was it an angel?
Your lens wasn't powerful enough to pick it up.
Right, you know what I mean. So what was it? But I could see it with my eyes. It was clear as day, and it was just, and it almost looked like it was maybe moving something,
Kind of
maybe
like
moving.
that too. Back in the day when I'd paranormal investigate, we'd have a lot of times where we'd start getting experiences, and then our cameras would die. Our equipment that had fresh batteries
That's what happened to me,
didn't work,
dude.
and it
That's what
and
happened
it's
to me.
like, I
Exactly
just
what happened
bought
to me
these
yesterday.
batteries. They're charged. It's not a technical error. There's something going on. And then as soon as the night's over, oh, the batteries are charged again. That happened to us actually quite often.
That happened to me yesterday. I was in a part in my town, and in this section of this trail that goes from a quarry to a park that has a bunch of fields where they for soccer and baseball and all that. Anyways, it's wooded. They got paved part right there, and I was going through that, and I'm looking at both sides as I'm going down with in my wheelchair with my camera, and I got an electric wheelchair, and I got my P900. My P900 battery dies within a minute of me being on the trail after taking a couple of images, right? And I know it was charged because I put it in charged, right? So then I go back home, and who knows? It was a good thing it happened for me because my son also left and I wasn't paying attention, but the night before we went grocery shopping, and my son left his car door open. So who knows? Maybe the ethereal realm, the spirit realm, something was like, hey, let's kill this battery so he get in his car and get that door closed before he has no battery juice in his car, right? So anyway, I go home and get a new battery. I come back, and then my battery, my wheelchair, because I have an electric wheelchair. It's one of those portable ones, you know what I mean? It's something that I can. It's not one of those big clunky things. I can't remember what they call it now. It's Stinger or something like that. Anyways, that battery dies. I mean, it's supposed to have, it can go 8 miles on the damn thing. I couldn't even finish a half a mile on it. But on each side of the pass, there were X structures, tree limbs everywhere. I was talking to an elderly couple, and they're asking me what I was doing. And I said, well, I'm just doing research on the trees. And go, oh, really? What's going on? I said, well, if you pay attention, they're dead everywhere. We got trees leaning everywhere. They're everywhere. Our trees are dying in our town. And I'm quite concerned. I brought up a little bit about the lines in the sky. But then I said, listen, it's a lot more complicated than that. There's multiple reasons why our trees are dying in our town. But it's shocking the number of dead trees and tree structures. And I'm talking, so there's path. There's a fence, a wooden fence on both, all the way from one end to the other. Nobody actually goes into these fields at all, and into the brush there and in the thickets. And right there on the edge, all the way along, there's like trees that have been thrown there and X's. And I'm like, at first I'm thinking, well, maybe it's the guys that mow the grass on each side of the trail, that maybe that's what they're doing. But then it doesn't make any sense because we're talking the size of the trunks of trees. We're talking that are like 8 feet long, 10 feet long, 3 feet long, whatever. And
Just hang on just 1 second, because I'm going to edit this out. This has never happened to me before. My whole background is stopped.
Bluetooth.
All right.
What happened? What
Sorry.
happened? What happened? What happened?
All my lights went out.
Oh, well, there we go. We're talking spiritual things, and it happens all the time, man. Electricity and power, and it's so like it's the battery, the juice in my little Stinger wheelchair thing is just like dead. I'm like, but I went out the same place today, but a different part. It's between a couple other quarries. They got like trails along now, and I went for a good 2 miles. Still had all this juice, but I know both things were charged fully for yesterday because I put them on charge the night before, right? And I always make sure that I bring at least 3 batteries. But yesterday I forgot to bring 3 batteries. I just kept the one battery It dies on me right away. The car door has been open for yeah, almost 24 hours. Once again, and my wheelchair battery is the juice is not there. So, and at the same time, I'm filming all these amazing tree structures on both sides of the trail, and it's not human, and it's not deer. There's something out there that's been putting these tree structures, X's and tree lanes, all the way. I mean, on both sides of the path, from one end all the way to the other. We're talking a good quarter mile. And is it Bigfoot? Is it tree spirits? What's going on at night? That's the question I have. Not only what's going on in the sky at night, what's going on in the woods at night? And when we do have somebody who's a Bigfoot researcher, right? There'll be a couple swinging dicks, excuse me, big guys with their guns and their flashlights and all that, right? They might capture something. They don't capture anything. They might capture an image or something that looks like a Bigfoot once or something, but they're never filming these things are being built. There's nobody that's filming these things being built. How are these things being built? It's a damn good question, and it's something that should be asked more often in the Bigfoot community and the Dogman community. How and when are these things being built? How come we're not filming these things being built? I know a couple guys who've captured on stills maybe a log or a long branch flying in the air during the day, right? They'll have like a trail camera and it catches it.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's about the extent of it. What are these spirits doing? Is it really Bigfoot, or are we talking about a whole bunch of like forest spirits, tree spirits? How are they working together in this? I know it sounds extremely bizarre, but you have to start thinking outside the box, because as long as you keep staying in the boxes that are given you, you're never going to get anywhere with this. We're never going to get anywhere with this. You know what I mean? We're going to stay stuck.
100% agree with you. You need to start. You can't just follow the norm. You have to dig it in further. You have to do your own research. And like you're saying too, tromping around to the woods with a shotgun and a flashlight, you're probably not going to find Bigfoot. Just like
they never do.
No, I honestly think that's why I was asking too about kind of like CFIing. I feel like the big reason them guys never seem to capture a Bigfoot is because they're putting out that ill intent. And I'm sure if Bigfoot is a nature spirit, which I put my money on, they probably can feel our emotions. They probably can tell when they're in danger and when we're a threat. They haven't been undetected by us for so long with being dumb.
No. Well, here's the other thing too. Then, so most of the time when people or have any kind of interaction or film these things, they're short. A lot of times, like I said, you start paying attention, you'll be seeing these heads popping out of trees and telephone poles and all that kind of stuff. I mean, they're literally popping out, and it's not pareidolia. You just have to train your eye. It's very easy once you start seeing it. You'll see it. It's like it stands out like a sore thumb. Then you have the Patterson film, in which somehow, some way, they managed to get that thing into a certain location, manifest in the flesh, which is incredibly difficult and uncommon, right? And yet other people have seen it in the flesh. I've seen it myself with my own eyes, and what appeared to be in the flesh, but like I told you, the one example in the ravine with the Crow Indian, it went through the damn tree. It didn't go around the tree. It didn't go above. It went through the tree. Okay?
There's clearly some interdimensional aspect to them.
Yeah, and it's something that the Native Americans, the Jibbas, it's a tradition for the Jibbaways that these things come in and out of the trees. But we, with our Western mindset, and we know everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everyone talks about the scientific method, but how many people have actually even applied it in anything in their lives, let alone They just talk about it. It's like a religion. It's like another religion, right? The scientism and the scientific method. And I'm not anti-science. I'm not anti-scientific
Neither am
method.
I.
But but people, they claim to believe in it, but they don't do it. Does that make sense?
It does. I
You
honestly
don't
too
practice it.
think with finding out the truth to the unknown and different phenomena is you got to take a little bit of religion. You have to take a little bit of science. You have to use that critical thinking, but you also have to be open-minded.
Yeah, and you're gonna have to be
To,
willing to be wrong over and over again until you find the right answer. That's part of the process of finding the right answer. You have to be willing to go down an avenue, accept the fact that it's a dead end, and attempt another avenue, and accumulate the nuggets, the factual nuggets, and put them together so you can start to create a true narrative of what's going on. I don't know if we'll even be able to do it, but it's my hope that we'll be able to do it. I think we could do it if we all work together instead of buying into all these, you got to be at this camp or this group or that group. I mean, I can't, it does, what baffles me that, I guess it takes a lot, I have to be honest, I should be fair. It takes a long time to understand this. Social engineering and how they use it against us, right? And they want us to know these different camps, right? As long as we're divided and going, and joining the group instead of pursuing the truth, no problem. You can believe this, that, the other. In fact, we'll give you the groups. We'll give you the leaders. We'll make sure those leaders have money and they have their conventions. And we'll make sure that you guys are going out in the woods together. A dozen of you with your guns and your flashlights. And you can chase your ghosts and all that. We don't have a problem with that because we know nothing's going to happen. You're just going to be entertaining people and entertaining yourselves. One out of maybe a dozen of you is going to start to see clearly what's going on, and the rest of them are just going to reject you because you're not going along the official narrative, right? And that's how it works. How many guys do I know who have been doing this research who are those exact same guys, right? Who go out in the woods. I'm not knocking you guys. See, if you're going out in the woods at night and then doing that, that's fine. That's what you got to do. What you got to do. But many of them who have done it numerous times, secretly will be saying, I don't think this is a flesh and blood thing. But when they get on their shows, it's all about flesh and blood thing, right? They cannot at all be honest that they might be dealing with spirits. I don't know how you can say it's not. You got things walking parallel with you. You hear the steps. You can't see it. You can't. You don't see footprints afterwards. You don't see the brush all being broken. That big thing that's walking parallel with you through the thickets. There should be such a trail. It should be ridiculous, and you'd be lucky to find one footprint. And only the one footprint. It goes on and on and on. And you go, man, why can't we be honest about what we're dealing with? What is stopping us?
I think a big part of it, though, too, is what's going on with the UFO and extraterrestrial community. There is, as much as there's people like us trying to disclose, there's other people trying to disprove and discredit and going out of their way. I mean, we've been battling with this since... since people have been looking into these sort of myths and stories, and there's always been somebody saying, "You're crazy, you're wrong. This is the narrative."
Yeah, but
unfortunately,
if it was,
I mean, if even with how our lives go, there's tons and tons of people that are, "You're nuts, you're wrong, you're wrong."
They want to
listen.
convince us that it's human nature, but I think what happens too is they exploit on human nature. And if people were given the opportunity to say, listen, a good example of how you could go about this is that Steve guy from howtohunt.com, right? You know about him? And if you don't, go check him out. He reads people's emails on his YouTube channel. He's a hunter up there in Canada. He's had his own experiences and he reads people's emails. And there'll be a person that says Christian, and they'll talk about calling upon the name of Jesus and how they drove these things away. And they'll talk about somebody else that's New Ager, and they'll talk about this and that. And everyone, he reads everybody's email. He doesn't judge it. He says, you know what? We have to get, and he's right, we have to get past this point of being in a group. The group should be, we're all trying to find the truth. When we should be willing to listen to a little bit.
Absolutely.
That maybe that dude that, maybe say a Zoroastrian background might have just a little bit to share with you. And maybe that Muslim dude might have a little bit to share with you. And maybe that Cherokee Indian might just have a little bit to share. And it goes on, and you know what I mean? And you put it together. And then you get honest about what's going on when we're out there in the field, and stop worrying about whether we have followers or not, because there has to come a point when you have to say to yourself, I'd rather have 50 followers that really want to know the truth than 50,000 followers that just want me to entertain their butts. I mean, there's more to just being entertained, and you could do both. By the way, you could entertain someone while pursuing the truth, but you got to be willing to pursue the truth honestly. And how many times have I talked to a dude, and who's in the Bigfoot community, like we're talking now, and he shut me up within 2 minutes. Can't have this conversation. Oh no, it's not a spirit. I seen it with my own eyes. I'm like, yeah, I see it with my own eyes too. And I also seen my own eyes go out of a tree into my mug in my backyard. I seen one go through a tree and didn't break it. And I'm not alone in this. There's like thousands of us have had this experience. And, but we can't.
That's the unfortunate side of it. There's so many people that have their own narratives, and they will not get out of their box.
Or they just cling on to someone else's narrative is even worse, right? That's what they do.
Exactly. I think that's so true in what you were saying, too, and that would be a great way to close tonight, is that we need to start looking into each other's research. We need to start talking when we're hearing somebody else's experiences. Be open-minded. Just sit back and listen. Put yourself in their shoes, and actually use critical thinking.
Well, next time you have me on, if you want me on next time, I'll because we didn't have time for this show.
Oh, absolutely. Would like to do a part 2. I'll cut this quick part out. My headphones are dying, and my phone is dying too. So I figured we'd wrap it up. Okay. And we've been talking for quite a bit.
Didn't feel like it.
I'm going to do... I know it goes so fast. Yeah. I'm going to do a little quick spiel about if you have an experience, email me, and then we'll just say goodbye.
Thanks, Sean. For
definitely looking forward to having you back on.
Yeah, it was fun, man. Thank you.
Go back in. Is there anything else you would like to close with, Mike?
Well, you guys have a great weekend coming up, a great night, and a great life. May the Lord of all spirits and the Creator God bless you 1,000,000 times than He ever blessed me.
Thank you so much, Mike, for being on. Check out his channel, Old Religion Dystopia. It is awesome. You'll get to see some of his cool images that you saw tonight and his videos. So please give him a like and a subscribe as well. And if you have an experience that you'd like to share, please email us at lostthroughtherabbithole@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your experience. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
See ya. Let's go. It's not going on. Oh, this right is reverse. I need to go. That's how I point to you, because opposite direction. I was like, how come I can't point at you? Because I'm not looking.